So Initia's Interwoven Stack, right? Because every layer 2 is a full Cosmos SDK chain. It kind of fits any VM that we build on top of Cosmos SDK. EVM and Solidity, MoveVM and Move, and then Wasm VM and Cosm Wasm. You can pick whichever virtual machine fits you and your application because I see VMs as really tools, right? There are benefits to each one of those.
GM, or should I say Ginit, and welcome to this week's episode of BlockHunters Voices. My name is Joachim Văju and I'm your host for today. BlockHunters Voices is a platform where we explore the journeys, stories, and insights of blockchain innovators and leaders, as well as the technologies driving their projects. Zon, the co-founder of Initia, is here with us today, and I have to say, brother, your progress in public speaking since the first year endeavor has been impressive. Kudos on that. You're all over the place, man. I've seen your podcast, your talks at conferences. You're great.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. And you're wearing quite the lovely hat this morning.
But before we dive into all things blockchain, I have to ask, are you a fan of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia? Because your username on X is always sunny.
I went to school in Philadelphia. And so it was very fitting. I have watched the show, though. It is pretty awesome. So I am a fan, and that is where the origins of my name came from.
Yeah, it really makes sense, As I said off the record, pop culture, Pop culture is everywhere, right?
Are you an Always Sunny fan?
Yeah, man. I've seen like 15 seasons or 16.
Damn, I think I dropped out somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, but they were pretty awesome, Pretty out of the box. I don't think they let people do this kind of shows nowadays because everybody gets offended.
They can't be doing shows like that anymore.
Okay, man. Now that we've broken the ice, let's get it on. Can you start by sharing your journey into the crypto space? What motivated you to transition from traditional tech to blockchain and ultimately co-found Initia?
Yep. So I was a software engineer originally. I was studying my master's in computer science around the time of COVID. And so during that time was like the biggest run-up that I had seen from all the stock craze related to GME, and then also crypto was getting pretty popular. I got gifted my first ledger from a friend in Christmas of that year, and that was kind of my calling to go check this thing out. I'd always bought some ETH on Robinhood when they launched trading there, but I had never actually been fully on chain. And so I started playing around, doing some basic farming. And then my first real community that I fell in love with and became part of was Olympus DAO. And so buying my first Ohm sometime around beginning of 2021, playing in the Discord, just watching the FOMO episodes, and just the monumental rise up was pretty awesome. And I thought this was the most entertaining industry possible. And that's kind of what led me to diving further into the tech stack, because I was like, it's actually just a lot of fun here.
Seems like you and Bella Chill are bringing back the vibes for Olympus DAO, right?
Hopefully. And then essentially I was getting ready to start a full-time software engineering job right after I graduated. And I was like, you know what? I should probably try building in this space since I am a software engineer. And at that time, I had been exploring the Cosmos ecosystem. I ventured off of Ethereum, found things like Mirror and Terra, Osmosis, etc. Fell in love with this app chain thesis, the belief that you would vertically integrate what you're building into the chain itself, then have this shared underlying set of infra for all things communication. And from there, I essentially just cold DM'd Doe on Twitter, and I said, "Hey man, I'm a capable engineer. Let me be an intern." And I proved myself by writing some smart contracts, got the job, and then became a full-time software smart contract dev.
So you're the only intern that didn't do memes on Twitter, right? That actually worked.
That's right. No, our intern's pretty good too. Memes on Twitter is an important job, and it takes some time.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so after that, you met Don and you started working at Terra.
Yep. So as a smart contract dev, helped build a few different dApps, was loaned out to the ecosystem, helped people build within the space. And then I met Stan, who is my co-founder now. We started our own project together. So left. It was basically an options related project. At the time, options vaults were very interesting, and Stan has a background as a quant trader and market maker. And so we built out this options platform. We raised some money. It was supposed to launch on Terra, and then the collapse happened, which was, brutal for a lot of people, including myself, because we had just lost basically a lot of the money that I had on chain. And then also the company that we were building was, kind of had no GTM anymore. And instead of pivoting to a new chain and trying to build up a community there and hype around the project, when I think a lot of the value prop came from knowing the projects in the ecosystem, we instead just decided to return the money back to our investors, take on some of the costs that we had spent so far personally, and then, spent a bit of time thinking what to do next. And during that phase, you saw the fall of like FTX, 3AC, Genesis, everything.
Tough times.
You start a project at the peak of the bull and everything's looking like golden rainbows and sunshine. And
that's why you have to launch in bear market, as you said in your tweets.
Exactly. And then we started Initia essentially at the peak of the bear, right? ETH was around 1,200. People didn't really care about Cosmos. People didn't care about the appchain thesis. And we just saw the need for this type of product, right? Like we saw that modularism was starting to pick up some steam. People still wanted to build their own chains. That was happening. Rollups were taking off on Ethereum, but there was kind of really no holistic solution. It seemed like people were slapping on different types of scaling mechanisms to Ethereum and then building the pieces in between to kind of connect these things. But we have the benefit of hindsight, right? We've seen like how Cosmos has developed over time, what went right, what didn't, the types of liquidity fragmentation you see, and essentially just decided that this system would work a lot better if we had the ability to control how the underlying L1 works and exists to support layer 2s, and then kind of an enshrined layer 2 system that removes a lot of the choice overload that rollup developers have today. So I recently got in some beef on Twitter about how I think rollups as a service are bad. I think the builders are phenomenal and we're all working towards the same vision of there will be thousands of different rollups. But I think the way that we get there is different. I think there are advantages to having everyone use the same interoperability system, the same data availability layer, the same underlying framework for how the rollups work, as well as things like the same product stack. And so we decided to enshrine a lot of these pieces into Initia's Interwoven Stack so that when you launch a rollup on Initia, you get a full-fledged Cosmos SDK chain. So you're able to change the way that transactions are ordered, the way that they're processed. You can internalize MEV using tools that Cosmos has had for a long, long time. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel and make people learn new mechanisms.
And you don't have to, right? I mean,
Exactly.
That's the...
And then kind of just baked in all the integrations you need, such as Layer 0, IBC, native USDC and CCTP access, oracles, fiat on-ramps, Celestia for DA, front-end modals to connect to different wallets, connect to different bridges to bridge directly into your rollup, and then a big economic framework called Initia VIP. And so I think it is the most seamless rollup framework that exists on the market right now, where you can actually just focus on building the most killer product and application instead of worrying about these infrastructure choices that are often kind of a waste of time, that you have to deal with integrations and paying for those. It all just is free on the Interwoven Stack.
And Initia supports like multiple virtual machines, including EVM, WASP, and Move.
Yeah, so Initia's Interwoven Stack, right? Because every layer 2 is a full Cosmos SDK chain. It kind of fits any VM that we build on top of Cosmos SDK. So EVM and Solidity, Move VM and Move, and then WASM VM and Cosm WASM. You can pick whichever virtual machine fits you and your application, because I see VMs as really tools, right? There are benefits to each one of those, whether that be security, whether you care about pure Rust, whether you care about building an object-oriented framework, or you're trying to fork something from Solidity land and all the developer tooling that already exists there. You should pick the VM that fits your application best, and I don't want to make that choice for you.
But what motivated you to this multi-VM approach?
Yeah, so initially I was a Cosm WASM developer, and a lot of folks on our team were too. But the rise of Cosm WASM has been quite slow, I think. And when we tried out Move back when Aptos and Sui originally launched, it felt like a next generation type of smart contract language. It was just a lot easier for new developers to understand, and just kind of totally changed the way that you view smart contracts. And because of that, we were like, okay, we clearly think Move is going to take off in the future and we'll have success. And so this should be a smart contract environment that we allow developers to use. And then we decided that Solidity was, just the most widely used smart contract language. There is the most developer tooling. It is the lowest barrier to entry if you are trying to fork a project and change certain parts of it. And so having support for it as well made sense too. And because all of the communication that's under the hood between rollups and between the Initia layer 1 is through layer 0 and IBC, we can essentially create fungibility across these VMs. So you can send an ERC20 token on a EVM layer 2 on Initia to a Move fungible asset coin on a Move layer 2 into a CW20 coin on a WASM layer 2. And they all kind of stay seamless.
Interconnected.
Yep, interwoven, as one might say.
Interwoven, exactly. So since we've mentioned the term interwoven, like it's mentioned here, so Initia is described as a network for interwoven rollups, yes? And also like a term for normal people, normies to understand, is like the app stores of blockchain, right? How do these concepts work together, and how do they reflect your vision for Initia's UX and ecosystem interconnectivity?
Yep. So on the interwoven side, I think it describes two things very well. One is the tech stack, right? As soon as you launch a rollup on the Interwoven Stack, you are connected to basically every other chain through either layer 0 or IBC, but also native USDC, and you're connected to oracles. So from day one, you don't have to deal with interoperability or bridging. It's kind of just baked in. The second describes how we see the chains working together. I think right now, I use this really weird analogy where rollups, as they exist right now, all kind of fight for themselves, and they're kind of like the EU in the sense that every state really only cares about itself. There is a HQ, which is Brussels, which nobody likes, and that is Ethereum in this example. People do like Ethereum though, but nobody liked Brussels, and it doesn't really contribute any value back to the layer 2s. Whereas on Initia, we kind of view this a little bit more like the US, in the sense that there's a federal government, which is the labs arm and the layer 1. We kind of dictate some of the things, like how monetary policy works with Initia VIP, as well as how transportation works in terms of like how the bridging of tokens is decided. But ultimately, each state is still its own chain. They can decide their own rules, the different mechanisms that lay within it. But collectively, every state still cares about the growth of the underlying layer 1 and the system at large. And the only way that we can
the same country.
Exactly. The only way that we can get the network effects of multiple applications living on the same chain, but in a roll-up centric world, is by having alignment along the economic system as well as the architecture system, right? Like having everyone use the same interoperability framework and the same DA layer and the same front-end toolings allows users to move around these different layer 2s much more seamlessly, but it also allows like the token transfers, the data transfers, all those sorts of things to do the same. And so we can leverage network effects because every new rollup on the Interwoven Stack helps make the system at large better and can cross-pollinate users to other ones. And I don't think that exists in other rollup frameworks right now.
I think right here the main argument against the appchain thesis is the challenge of actually getting high quality apps deployed on your ecosystem. Right now, Initia has managed to attract several impressive rollups from day one, like Milky Way, Blackwing, Czar, and many others. What is Initia's strategy for attracting these high quality apps?
So I think naturally, most projects will eventually want to become chains, right? And I think
like
we're seeing
DYDX did.
DYDX, now we're seeing Unichain. And this is for two reasons. One is because you want to own the value that you create. You don't need to be rent seeking. The second is it actually lets you build a better product because you give developers superpowers. Being able to change the way that your VM works or the way that transactions are ordered can lead to actually better user experiences, right? On Hyperliquid, for example, they filter different types of transactions to the top of every block so that there are no harmful actors, essentially, that would typically take place in order book systems. And so you can build better experiences. And once you have that dedicated block space that's just for you, you know that you can scale as well. And so as people move towards app chains, they're starting to look at different stacks. And I think Initia stack is, like you're saying, a little bit like the iOS Apple vision, in the sense that instead of providing this base infrastructure and then letting you choose all these different components to pick and choose from, we kind of just enshrine all of that for you and make sure that it is the most lightweight system to get everything you would get on a monolithic chain directly on your rollup day one, so you can just focus on building the dApp. And from there, what we've tried to do is focus on just a handful of projects that we think are high quality, that are building something unique and have reasons to actually attract users. I think we've seen enough generic EVM base layer chains that get the same forked
copy
projects.
Over copy.
Exactly. We don't need any more copy paste. And I think these base layer alt VM chains, even though they're in alt VMs, they also kind of do the same in the sense that like we just have now a lending market or a DEX that is in this alt VM. And so I think the app chain thesis, what it lets you do is really focus on trying to build something that you can't do anywhere else because you have the flexibility and control to do so. And so once we have kind of found teams that are doing something unique, our goal is just to help them win as much as possible. And that might mean tech stack support, product support, positioning, economic support, kind of whatever they need. But
do you offer grants? If I'm not mistaken, you don't offer grants, right?
We do not offer grants, right? I think often the type of developers that are grant seeking will take grants again later to go elsewhere. And
exactly,
because
they
of
have
that,
for money.
Right. And so I think you have a big grant program if you're looking to have a large number of applications, but maybe not a handful of quality applications that you think are going to stick around and be there for a long time. And so our entire strategy has been find a handful of really good applications that are building something unique, novel, native, and then just help them win. And I think we have quite an awesome set building on the Interwoven Stack.
Indeed you have, man. So basically you keep them engaged, offering them tech support, economic support, and stuff like that, right?
That, and I think they're just bought into the vision that like this is probably the only way this modular expansion actually works, when a lot of these fungible choices are taken away, because you can have the network effects that you wouldn't have elsewhere. And those network effects are like what allow you to grow, because it is very difficult as a single application to get attention, to get users, to get liquidity. But if you have this system where liquidity users are free flowing between all these different rollups, then it's a lot easier to grow the pie together with a handful of other folks. And I think the rollups that are using the Interwoven Stack are relatively bought into that belief as well.
What sectors or types of application do you think are currently underrepresented on Initia? What kind of minutias would you like to see more in the future?
So I think we have quite a handful of DeFi applications, a few games that I think are pretty kick-ass, some along the NFT side as well. I think what we'd like to see and are trying to support next is a little bit down the line of consumer products and consumer applications. I think consumer applications just have the potential to onboard new users in a way that DeFi can't, right? Like the way that DeFi often attracts users is things like high yields and tokens doing lots of multiples, right? Number going up is definitely one of the best forms of marketing. But I think from last cycle, a lot of retail got burnt essentially along
It's not
those lines.
sustainable in the long term. It's good in a bull market. It's very good, but in bear everybody loses, right?
Exactly. That's why some of the DeFi apps on Initia are not things like a solidly fork or like a fork of a DEX that's just giving emissions. It's something like Blackwing that is trying to offer a novel use case that you can't really do elsewhere. And so I think consumer applications just target an entirely different set of users. So things like Puffpaw, you might not even know that you're on chain, but it is just a phenomenal idea of, you might just need to mid-curve it and say, we're putting vapes on chain. But the other argument is that you are unlocking this very niche data set of vape users that you probably would have a hard time getting anywhere else. And that data is really valuable.
We had a lot of fun recently because of the projects being funded by VCs, this kind of VCs coins that are only down only. You guys actually raised and have a very smaller FTV, and you actually did something very impressive with Kobe's eco platform, where you raised 2.5 million in under 2 hours. What motivated this community first approach, and how does it align with your vision?
We've always seen successful ecosystems grow slowly over time with their ecosystem, their users, but also like their offering. I think people in crypto are relatively tired of these high FDV infra launches where the upside is taken by the private markets. And when they're able to buy, it's in the multiple billions. And then, usually that's the top. And that is like the worst way to build a community long term. It is great if you are trying to quickly bootstrap your treasury and then kind of just keep hanging on for dear life. But I don't think that's the way that you build a successful project in crypto, right? Like crypto is all about community ownership and decentralization and giving back to the individuals to own this thing. And we've always thought that was true, but we did need some money to bootstrap what we have been building for the past 2 years. So we, on every single fundraise that we did, tried to be as conservative as possible by selling the minimum amount that we needed to kind of go out for this next phase of the project and actually ship it. And so across our pre-seed, seed, and Series A, we sold about 5% of the supply in each of them, have raised around $22.5 million, which will keep us going for quite a few years. And then decided to do this Echo sale because one, Kobe is one of our angel investors, and he's just a legend. And two, we wanted people to be able to get the opportunities that they typically aren't able to buy into the ecosystem, to buy into the vision that we're building, and be with us on the journey for the long term, and get ideally the exposure as well.
And not by the top on Binance or any checks that will be launched, right?
Exactly. You want these people to be exposed to ideally low valuations so that there is room to grow after you launch and the ecosystem starts expanding and we start hitting the goals that we want to.
We talked a little at the beginning about the VIP program, which means vested interest program. That is it's a unique feature of Initia. I recently read an article from 4 Pillars that dug into the difference between what they called the next-gen Layer 1 tokenomics, comparing Berachain's POL, Injective's Burn Action, and Initia's VIP. Do you think these three mechanisms belong in the same category? How would you set VIP apart from other approaches, and what specific advantages does it offer to the Initia ecosystem?
Yeah, so let me give some background on VIP first. The reason that we developed it was, one, we don't do grants, like we mentioned. And we thought that if you reflect on the tokenomics of multi-chain systems right now, you basically have only two to look at. One is the Cosmos ecosystem, and the other is Ethereum. Cosmos and Atom totally failed in what they were trying to do, in the sense of no consumer chain or no chain on Cosmos cares about Atom. Like, it doesn't really offer those teams anything. It is not a router that solves IBC liquidity fragmentation. It offers some security if you use ICS, but that's pretty unscalable, and there's only, I think, 2 teams that use it. And then Atom wasn't used to help these other teams like rise up and do better and attract more users. Everyone is kind of just left to fend for themselves. Naturally on Ethereum though, and I think the reason this happened was because rollups could initially only use ETH as gas. And also everyone is an ETH maxi that is typically building on Ethereum. I'm also an ETH maxi, by the way. It's the only asset that I own essentially outside of USDC. And so ETH became the canonical money of their multi-chain system. It is what's used for gas. It's what's in the largest dexes, pairs. It's what's in the lending markets as the largest asset. And so on Initia, we wanted to do 2 things. One, ensure that Init has a suite of new use cases and kind of becomes the canonical money of the interwoven world we're building. But 2, create a mechanism that helps Layer 2 teams on the Interwoven Stack attract users and retain them over time, and is also fair. If you look at a lot of grant programs like Arbitrum's STIP and the OP grant program, I think these are often a little bit subjective and usually end up in the treasuries of these teams' projects and not going back to users. And that's how it should be done. And so we developed VIP to kind of combat both of these things. And what it does is it essentially programmatically distributes escrowed init to layer 2s. Layer 2s decide on the mechanism of how it should go to their users by incentivizing the things that they care most about. So things like maybe it's volume if you're a perpetuals platform, maybe it's mints if you're an NFT platform, maybe it's borrows if you're a lending market. And then these rewards are distributed as escrowed init directly to your users based on those KPIs, and users unlock those rewards over time by maintaining their engagement. So it is a retention mechanism that keeps users in a flywheel where they essentially keep using the applications. As they keep using them, they unlock these rewards, but also earn more. And this builds new use cases for the init token and helps build demand because one of the distribution criteria is how much init you have on that layer 2. But it also just lets layer 2s target the users that they care about, build sustainable models of revenue, take fees where they should, but incentivize users to use applications rather than incentivize the application itself. And I think when it comes to tokenomic designs, lots of people focus on the supply side. So how can we burn the supply and slowly reduce it? But I think you're never going to be able to burn enough of the supply to create tangible market effects unless you have some sort of crazy Ponzi. And without that, it's just very hard to do so. And so instead, we focused on the demand side. How can we build new demand and new use cases for the init token across all of these different applications?
And user acquisition and retention, right? Because that's the main issue. Every user hops from one ecosystem to another, right?
Yep, that's exactly right. How can we keep users playing with your application and give you the means to bootstrap your layer 2 without having yourselves to launch a token?
Thank you for that, Zon. I know you're a big fan of Smash Bros. Everybody on Twitter says that you are beating their ass. You're a legend in that space. This is a game that has been a staple in pop culture for years. How do you see the influence of pop culture, including gaming, music, and cinema, evolving in today's crypto and meme culture? Do you think it plays a significant role in shaping how communities and projects are built in the blockchain space?
Definitely. I think, pop culture and what people like to do outside of crypto is very relevant because these are the things people are passionate about, and you want to create a vibe for your chain and the projects that you're building with to attract different types of users. And if you can create the right vibes, right, that is a huge reason why people come and use and interact with applications. It's not just the financial aspects, but also the culture, the community, the vibes that those offer, what are going to keep you around long term and potentially have you contribute to something rather than just use an application passively. And so if we're under the belief that we need to exponentially increase the number of builders within crypto as a whole, using vibes and culture and community is the way that you can create these safe communities where people are feeling like they will be supported. They're having fun here. This is a place where they want to dedicate more of their time and their efforts to actually try building something. And I think we have seen the vibes of quite a few different chains that are doing this really well. So I think we're doing it well. I think Barachain and Mega ETH are also two ones that I would point to that have just immaculate vibes where I enjoy interacting with their communities.
Exactly. I think the winners of the next bull run are gonna be the chains that bring people together and vibe together. I mean, this is the important stuff, right? people need to be together, right? They need a sense of belonging somewhere.
Yep. I think there was this post that I saw from Cami at Berachain some point a while ago that was talking about how vibes are one of the reasons that you can attract users in the first place. And this is one of the reasons why I think things like chain abstraction, while they're going to be incredibly popular, are going to have a hard time still finding distribution, because once you abstract everything and you're just using applications, you might miss out on that vibes aspect, which is one of the reasons why people get into an application in the first place, or a community. And having a community is what will keep those users over time and contributing. And so I think you need a nice mix of both of these. And one of the things about chain abstraction that I've been thinking about lately is because Initia comes with a full suite of a product stack as well, like how you use wallets, how you bridge into different chains. We have the perfect distribution system here to build a chain abstracted experience on this multi-chain network over time, and then ensure that the vibes are still immaculate across all of them within this kind of Garden of Eden of multi-chain.
Do you think at some point in time we are going to expand this chain abstraction to fiat as well? Meaning I only have one application, I only use Initia ecosystem, I want my euros or USD, 2 clicks, and I have Initia, and I can have access to all the interwoven rollups.
Definitely, yeah. I think there will be a lot of front ends that eventually do this sorts of thing. I think, though, that having different front ends is part of that vibe, right? Like using and experiencing different applications. You go to different websites right now, right? Like I don't use Twitter to buy my food, but I do use it for just looking at, tweets.
For shit posting.
Yeah, for shit posting. I think there should be different websites for these different experiences, but I think the abstraction between fiat and USDC and stablecoins will be done over time. Like you should be able to have $1 in your bank account and use it on chain in like just a couple of clicks. And I think we're getting there. We're almost there already.
Revolut does something similar. I don't know. In the US, you have Venmo, right? I don't know if they do something similar. It's kind of the same app, but different names.
Yeah, we have Venmo. But I think as like wallet abstraction gets better and you're able to sign into these applications with social logins in your Gmail and Twitter, and fiat on-ramps are natively integrated into those systems, you can basically just have dollars in your bank account, sign in with your Google login, and start using crypto applications immediately.
By the way, for everybody watching this episode, you can sign into your Initia wallet with your Google account, right? And Apple account, I'm not sure, but Google, I'm sure. Because
the Initia wallet widget kind of sits at a layer on top of the application, and it allows you to connect to any Cosmos wallet, EVM wallet, Solana wallet, as well as social logins, without having to deal with any network switching, any RPCs, etc. Even if you're using 10 different rollups on Initia, you still have the same account, and you just click that button and sign. And I think this is quite a great user experience because switching RPCs is a nightmare. Bridging manually between these chains is a nightmare. Exactly. Being able to just sign across multiple VMs through this one interface is fire.
Mainnet is just around the corner. Are there any other major milestones or features you're particularly excited about in the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years, or 2 years?
Yeah, in the next 3 to 5 years, I hope to see more applications become chains. I hope to see the user experience that we build across this system really take off, in the sense that it feels like a single chain that you're using, even though you're using different chains and different applications across them all. And then I just want to see total expansion of the number of rollups on Initia that have users keep them around over time and are trying to build something unique. I think we'll get there, and we will eventually switch over to things like ZK stacks, using ZK rollups, minimizing the window of bridging. And, that's the good thing about having a product suite in tandem to this architecture stack, is that we can switch parts of the architecture at will if there is a new system that works better without disrupting the typical user experience, because those can all be fit in as well. And that's what, good infrastructure systems exist to do. They're going to evolve and change over time. We believe what we have right now is the best, but innovation will happen and we'll change different parts.
It's basically like everybody knows how to use a credit card, but nobody knows exactly how everything works in the back end, right?
Yep. And it's just like using traditional Web 2, cloud computing, right? Those computers get better, those things evolve, but at the end of the day, as a user, you're just using an application that's hosted on the cloud somewhere. You don't really care about the underlying tech stack.
Exactly. What other trends or innovations in the crypto space are you most excited about? It can be something totally opposite to the sector you operate on.
So right now, I am probably most bullish on one, definitely just the rise of more rollups, but also just alt VM expansion. Like I was mentioning, I think Solidity is great, and it is the most widely used, but I think over time we will see more and more people trying out things like Move, Cosmosm. I am not as bullish on SVM as maybe some others are. I think the reason people decide to use SVM is because they like Solana and the community there and the chain there and the vibes, but not because they're like SVM is actually the best virtual machine. And so some of these other VMs I think will take off. People will build unique products and we'll see how those expand. And then I'm excited about more of these consumer facing products and fully on-chain games. I think those just have the opportunity to bring in users that we haven't seen in crypto before through, different targets rather than, financial aspects.
Yeah, but we've seen a lot of failed projects, because people are incentivized with the tokens that don't have any buying pressure, and they are just down only because the users are actually dumping the rewards that they get, right?
Maybe they don't need a token necessarily. Or maybe we just need more iterations, right? Like the only way that we find success is by failing repeatedly until something sticks.
That's the only way to success, by failing.
Like 99% of projects fail. And that's the same across Web 2 and Web 3 and elsewhere. And so we just need the total number of projects to increase and the winners slowly get found by the market.
We want to wrap things up with some rapid fire questions, get a sense of where your head's at the moment in crypto. Just quick top of mind answers for this. You don't have to think very much.
Okay.
So,
I'll turn my brain off.
What's the most underrated and overrated idea in crypto right now?
Underrated idea is probably stablecoin adoption and yield-bearing stables. I think there are a few of them, but I think they will monumentally rise because it's so easy for new people to get into that, of like a safe token that is pegged and just generates yield. So stuff like SUSDE. Overrated, I think restaking is a little bit overrated.
What are your 3 favorite crypto apps in terms of user experience and cool use cases overall?
Fantasy Top is one that I've been playing lately, which is where you basically buy cards of different people that post on Twitter and you kind of battle with others. Another one is that was pretty awesome. Another one is Kamigachi. They are, it's kind of a shill, but they're building on the Interwoven Stack. But it is just a really cute, fully on-chain game that I've spent quite a few hours in. I think they've just tweaked mechanisms so much to keep users around. Like, even the music is so good that I just leave it on in my background and work to it. And the last one is just an application that I still use relatively often, which is Thala, which is a protocol on Aptos. It's just built by some friends, and it's just a great yield farm.
Oh, nice. And what crypto-related topic have you completely changed your mind in the past year?
Completely changed my mind.
Yeah.
I think, okay, so one of the projects that I was insanely bearish on, but I am now bullish on, is Eclipse.
Okay, that's interesting.
They have just, after their rebrand and grabbing some new folks on the team like Terry and Anmol, I think they're just on a much better path to success. And I think, like I was saying, I don't think people really care about SVM, but for some reason they've managed to acquire a bunch of interesting teams. And I think by launching their chain without a token from day one, they're going to build quite an interesting ecosystem. And as a Ethereum fan, and since it's my biggest bag, I definitely do care about like layer 2s on Ethereum succeeding. And I'm going to change my answer for the most underrated project. I think it is CowSwap.
Oh, really?
CowSwap is just the best experience for swapping assets. And I think it goes a little bit unnoticed.
Yeah, CowSwap has that MEV protection, right?
If they have MEV protection, and then they also have this system where essentially they match orders in the back end if someone is trying to sell and someone is trying to buy. And then instead of just swapping on a pair, they basically use a system of intent solvers that go and do that for you. But they've been doing it for years, and really only intents have gotten popular lately. And so they have just been the place that I used to swap for the past 2 years, basically.
Maybe they need to build their own chain, so people can notice. I mean, that's what everybody's doing, right?
I think they technically have their own chain because they're owned by Gnosis, and Gnosis has a chain.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Okay. What's one key piece of advice you'd give to a crypto startup / builder?
Don't be afraid of pivoting. And, I think it's okay if you are initially down a direction that isn't working. It's okay to fail fast and switch to a new idea. And then I would say once you have found something that you're passionate about, just keep at it. Like, the only way to succeed is by maintaining your belief if you have a strong one, and then building towards that vision. And so it's okay if adoption is a little slower than you are expecting. If you believe in what you're building over the long term, you'll hopefully find success. Or you'll fail, and it's okay to fail. You can try again.
Fail is the step to success, right? So
yep.
You have to fail to have success.
Exactly.
Zon, it's been awesome having you on. I'm really looking forward to mainnet. I'm really looking forward to try all the products that will build, that are built and that will be built on Initia. And the future is interwoven.
Please be patient. I am interwoven.
Exactly, man. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.